Alrighty, we're gonna get going. It's 6 o'clock and we've got a really packed program for everybody tonight. So welcome to the 2022 Salt River Watershed Watch Annual Conference. My name is Becca and I'm part of the Salt River Watershed Watch Steering Committee, and myself along with David Wicks will be steering the ship tonight. So we've got a packed program and some really great presenters and interesting relevant topics to this area. We're trying to keep it local. And I'm going to jump to the next slide. Okay, so we've got a lot of great presenters tonight. We've got Ward Wilson. Ward is the Executive Director of Kentucky Waterways Alliance. Ward is also a part of our steering committee. Amanda Gumbert. Dr. Gumbert is a water quality specialist with UK Cooperative Extension Service. Joanne, who a lot of you have met and know, she's the Watershed Watch State Coordinator with the Kentucky Division of Water. Bennett Knox. Bennett is the Parks Administrator for Jefferson Memorial Forest and Natural Areas. And then myself, I'm going to provide the state of the Salt River. We've got some creek spotlights tonight. So some of our samplers have agreed to give us a little bit of information and talk about their sites with us. We've got Ed Algier, Dr. Greg Coons, and Dr. Russ Barnett. And we also have a sampler video that Michael Price has provided for us. And then David Wicks is going to talk about our Earth Day event. And I know we're all familiar with Zoom, but this meeting is being recorded. You should have seen that. Feel free to turn your camera off if you want while we're talking. You can keep it on as well. Use the chat for conversations and questions. We'll all kind of be keeping an eye on that. So feel free to use that. And then just please make sure to mute yourself when we've got presenters going. And a little bit more detailed here, our agenda. I know I sent this out. This is pretty much the same. It's changed a little bit. So we had our recertification training. Thanks, Joanne, for that. Ward is going to start us up with talking about community engagement. And then we're going to have those sampler spotlights after that. And then we're going to show a couple of videos from the Woods Today, which is a UK program. And last year we went to Dr. Greg Coons' property. And so we've got a couple of really nice videos to show from what was taken out there. And Amanda's going to present those for us. Joanne's going to provide a few updates for us about our habitat assessments. And David will talk about our Earth Day celebration, and I'll show that video from Michael Price. Then after that, I'll get into the state of the Salt River Watershed Watch, where I talk about sampling from last year and our results. And after that, we'll have Bennett talk about an introduction to Louisville Metro Parks and focusing on natural areas and its water-related initiatives. So anything from David or other steering committee members before we kind of jump in here?
Nope, I'm looking forward to the evening.
All right, well, Ward, I will let you take it away. You should be able to share your screen. I'll stop mine. And again, Ward is the Executive Director with Kentucky Waterways Alliance, who is a main partner for both us here in Salt River, as well as at the state level with Watershed Watch in Kentucky.
Hello, I'm Ward Wilson. As she said, I'm the Executive Director of Kentucky Waterways Alliance. I was a sampler at the very beginning with David Wicks and others and Russ Barnett in Salt River Watershed Watch. So today I'm going to talk to you about community engagement, talk a little bit about what we do and how you can engage through KWA and some of the things we do, but also I'm going to just have one slide about our fiscal sponsorship of Salt River Watershed Watch, so people know about that. So I'm going to see if I can go forward. Yeah, good. So I've got, there's me, obviously, and I wanted to introduce Susan Griffin Ward. She's been with us for about 3-4 months as our Director of Community Engagement. And I don't have a picture yet, but we have a new employee as of yesterday. Deb Ackerson is our Administrative Operations Manager. I'm very pleased to have this. We were in need of some help with our organization. So I know that a lot of you all know us, and I will zoom through these pretty quickly, but just to let you know who we are, we're a statewide organization that is focused on the waterways of Kentucky. Our mission is to protect, restore, and celebrate Kentucky's unique waterways and their watersheds. There's nobody just like us. There's a lot of groups that work on water on a local basis or maybe regionally, but we're a statewide group, and we only are waterways. So sometimes we're about the only voice on water, but I know there are a lot of you all speak up as well. We work all over the state. We obviously the Salt River, we're here in Louisville. Louisville is our headquarters. We're in St. Matthews. In the Muddy Fork watershed, we should all know our watershed address. I bet a lot of you all know. And we do have a project in the Kentucky River Basin in the Red River Gorge. We have we wrote a watershed plan there several years ago, and now we have a watershed coordinator implementing that plan, Laura Gregory. So these are our main areas of that we work in. We do watershed management, water policy, community engagement, and I'm having trouble seeing the last one. I should know it by heart. Waterways restoration. A little navigation bar was over it. That is the Rockcastle River. Let's see. Okay, watershed management is one of our most important programs. All our programs are important, of course, but this is where we work on individual waterways where there's an issue. So we work in Beargrass Creek with the Beargrass Creek Alliance. We work in Red River, and we work with the local group there, the Friends of Red River. We work with the Salt River Watershed Watch and Green River Watershed Watch. This is where, you know, the local group is really in the lead, but we provide support. We provide information, we provide sometimes financial support, sometimes financial management, or just we put things on our Facebook for you. So there's a process, as I'm sure a lot of you know, that for watershed planning, and KWA helped write the Kentucky manual on doing watershed planning along with Division of Water. And I'm going to go to the next. So the work we do for Salt River Watershed Watch falls within our watershed management, part of our mission. So this is sort of inside baseball, maybe a little bit, but I think it's good to know that we are the fiscal sponsor of Salt River Watershed Watch. And what that means is we are registered with the IRS as a 501c3, meaning that if people donate to us, they get a tax benefit. And that really helps. And it helps you raise money if you can give people that tax benefit. So we can confer that to people that we have an agreement with, like Salt River Watershed Watch, and we do with Salt River Watershed Watch. So the way it works is people donate to us, but they say if they have a check, they just write, this is for Salt River Watershed Watch, and we put it, or if it's online, as long as they let us know somehow that it's for this group, we will put it in the bank account that we have set up for Salt River Watershed Watch. We report to the group on your finances. We pay bills, process invoices, working with Joanne and Becca. And I think it's good for you to know we are audited. We're certified with the Better Business Bureau. We take our responsibility very seriously on managing your funds well. And as I said, this is part of our mission. And so we don't take any fees for doing this. We may, if we had to get into a lot of work for a project, maybe we might share some revenue, but we would do that in consultation with the group. That would probably be where maybe we go after a grant together. And we write the grant application, or we administer the grant, or we may even work on the grant, and that would be part of the grant application. I will say in the past we've done grants for this group, even a small grant. If there's not a lot of work for us, we don't charge a fee. We don't want to take away from the resources that the group has. I know it's tough to raise money. It just comes down to how much work we do. And we do also sponsor some other groups, the Green River Watershed Watch and the Friends of Red River. Friends of Red River is an example of why there's a need for fiscal sponsorship. They were just a volunteer group working for years doing cleanups, and somebody on the group decided, let's apply for a grant, get some money to buy trash bags and maybe some boats. Well, they applied for a grant and they got it, but they immediately realized they didn't have a bank account. They weren't a 501c3, and so they needed a little help, managing that money. And we've actually, I wish I knew the number, but I know they have about $8,000 in the bank now, where they didn't really have any when we started working with them a few years ago. So we feel good about that. That's helping put money into that group and into that watershed. And we do a Red River festival every year, usually in May. And our next one's going to be May 21st. So look for that in our social media. So that was the work we do with you all, is pretty much part of our watershed management program. We do other things, and I'll just touch on these. We work on water policy. So this is where our watchdog role. We are watching out for the waterways as best we can. There's a lot of waterways in the state. We are almost every day, certainly every week, we get a notice about somebody dumping or something happening, and we try to stay on top of it. Sometimes we just have to tell the people, help them find the right agency to talk with. Joanne was talking earlier about the 911 number. We give that out sometimes, but sometimes they just need help, like technical assistance, and really a lot of times we'll direct them to their local conservation district. So we are, the bedrock environmental law that we work with is the Clean Water Act. And it covers a lot of different things, as we've got listed there. Anyway, obviously pollutant discharge and permits is a big part of the Clean Water Act, but there's also, there are other things that we deal with, like wildlife issues. Sewer overflows and stormwater are a really big issue. And we are working in regional partnerships on Mississippi River and Ohio River initiatives. We do a lot of that work through our partnership with National Wildlife Federation. You can see their little logo there. They are really a sharp group. They have a lot of connections on Capitol Hill and know the policy inside and out. So they help us quite a bit. The little power plant you see up in the upper right is at Lake Harrington. This is the E.W. Brown Kentucky Utilities plant, and they have coal ash ponds, very large ones that are leaking into the lake. That's really not disputed. They've had a notice of violation, but their approach has been to slowly, I would say, study the issue and try to look for other sources of the contaminants. Our position has been clean it up. We know where we know that that coal ash metals are getting into the lake. We've even documented deformities in fish in the lake from selenium. I will say that we don't have any knowledge of any drinking water impacts. It is a drinking water lake, but we're not alleging that. But we do see some problems with wildlife impacts. So that's an ongoing effort of ours in our watchdog role. And I guess that gets to the issue of community engagement. If you want to take more steps towards dealing with a water quality issue, we could help with that. So you could contact us. We do restoration work. Mostly it's in partnership with the Fish and Wildlife Service, the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service, and it's geared towards threatened and endangered aquatic wildlife. So we do a lot of different projects through that. We have a fund of money that we manage in coordination with Fish and Wildlife called the Kentucky Aquatic Restoration. Actually, it's Resources Fund. I misspelled it. It does a lot of restoration. The picture of the guy in the picture down below is Monty Mcgregor, and Dr. Mcgregor runs the Wallace Conservation Center at the Forks of Elkhorn. He works for Kentucky Fish and Wildlife, but much of his funding for his laboratory comes through this fund because he works with so many endangered mussels. Monty has, not single-handedly, but he and his team have saved species. There's no question that the purple cat's paw mussel was drawn back from the brink of extinction by the work he's done. There were very few individuals left, and now he's raised, hundreds of thousands in the lab and propagated them. We're returning them back to Kentucky streams, and there are other species as well. So we just are real proud of our partnership with him. The picture of the track hoe in the middle of the river there is the removal of Green River Dam 6. We did that in 2017, and that was the culmination of many years of study and work. If any of you've worked with federal agencies, you'll know that they don't move real quickly, but we got all the studies done and the approvals done to remove 3 dams from the Green and Barren Rivers. We've removed 6 in 2017. Last year, we started removing Dam 5. It's turned out to be a bigger dam and harder concrete, so we're going to have to finish that this year. And then Barren River, downstream of Bowling Green, has Barren River Dam 1, which I hope we'll start removing this year as well. So those are some of the biggest projects we've done. Green River Dam 5 is the largest dam removal project done in the state of Kentucky. And it's actually the largest dam removal that this Fish and Wildlife team that is really expert in removing dams has done as well. So, if you love rivers, you want them to flow free. So we're very pleased we can work on that project. And we do community engagement. Everybody loves water, but people need to understand the issues to really get engaged and work on them. One way to get engaged is to do citizen science like you all are doing. So I want to applaud all of you who volunteer to sample. So that's one thing. Environmental education, cleanups. We do pollinator plantings. We have a Wild and Scenic Film Festival every year. If you've been to it, you'll remember that usually we have it in the spring, but this year we're going to do it in September. We're still trying to figure out how to navigate COVID. I hope that we can. I'm pretty sure we're going to be in person, probably an online version as well. And we do fun stuff. So this is also engagement. Obviously, we're a member organization. I would love for you all to become members of KWA or start your own group, and we'll help you get started, or find a group and work with them. We have a lot of great events where you can get out and learn how to do things, or come and teach us how to do some things. We don't have all the answers. We do a lot of different things like rain gardens and rain barrels and pollinator gardens. I'll put a plug in for something that the Mississippi River Network, of which we're a part, promotes. It's really easy to just sign up on a website called onemississippi.org and become a river citizen. You kind of put your name on the list to say you care about rivers. And then, of course, we're all over social media. And that's all I had, and I'll answer questions, but I think we're about finished with my time. I'd be glad to talk to you. Oh, I do have one more thing. Sorry. I just this week talked to some people from University of Louisville and University of Kentucky. There's a PhD student doing a study of a technique to detect COVID virus, SARS-CoV-2 virus in waterways. Some of you may remember we did a project last year, actually in 2020 and 2021, where we sampled Beargrass Creek looking for that virus, wondering if, some came out of the sewers with overflows. So this student at UK is also working with U of L, and she needs to sample 3 places. We've determined that we're probably going to sample in Seneca and Cherokee Parks. And the sampling involves just an absorptive pad that we put in the water, and then it has to get pulled out after a rain event, put in a bag, put in a cooler, and sent off to the lab. So not nearly as complex as what you all do in your sampling, but she needs volunteers to help with that because she's in Lexington. And so I'm thinking maybe 1 or 2 people, might be good to have a backup person, would be really helpful. And so I'll just say, if you're interested in doing that, contact me, and I'll see if I can get you hooked up. We're going to go out and look at the sites on Monday, but you don't have to start that soon, but we would like to get somebody to help with the project. And actually, she might need some help just getting the samples to Lexington. And there's going to be 5 sampling events, so it's not a long-term thing, but it's more than a couple of times.
Thanks, Ward. And if you don't mind putting your email in the chat, just in case anybody wants to jump at that and reach out to you right away. And it does look like we have a question. Gordon, did you want to unmute and ask your question?
Yes, please, Ward. This is Gordon McKimmey. I farm out on the Salt River, and Sarah Lynn Cunningham had made me aware that there's a new federal regulation called MS4, which has been implemented by many of the counties around Spencer, which is where I live. Bullitt, Hardin, Jefferson, Shelby, and others. And they have actually implemented plans that require any sort of disturbance of over 2,000 square feet as a part of these plans to be regulated, permitted, and they actually have now agents and people in the counties that manage this process. Spencer has not done anything like that. I've been after the judge executive and the magistrates here for years to do that. We've had unregulated digs right on the river that have been going on in riparian habitats for over 15 years now. Would one of your staff or someone from your group be available if I could get you a meeting with the Spencer County politicians to address this sort of thing? We've got an election coming up, and it would be good for people in our county to know more about that and understand that this unregulated digging is having a real effect on our quality of life and the quality of habitat in the river.
I think I could. I will say MS4 is municipal separate storm sewer program system, and it's a stormwater permit, and it applies to urbanized areas. So out in the country may not be included, but it may. It might be that Spencer County just doesn't have enough urbanized area. I just don't know there. But it's a good thing to have. I'm in favor of the program and the permitting, and we keep an eye on those and make sure people are implementing that correctly. Another thing, though, if people are disturbing areas along streams, that they could be subject to 401 water quality certifications or 404 fill permits from the Corps of Engineers. There are a lot of things that could apply. I know we've talked, I think I met you at a Salt River annual meeting, and I wasn't aware that there was so much topsoil mining as you said,
Well, it's gotten worse. It's gotten worse in the county here because as all these other counties have now limited it, there's one property right across from me, about 50 acres. And I've tried the state and everybody I can to monitor this sort of thing, and they're just not doing it. The people here in Spencer say we have no way to do it. And, as a result of all these other counties beginning to manage it, And the rule is, I think, 75,000 people in the county or something to that effect. Spencer has not done anything, but I think it's an appropriate time politically to address it with future leaders. We got a new judge executive that'll be coming in this year, and I can get y'all an appointment, I think, to discuss it if y'all are willing to do it. But land is changing hands at exorbitant rates here. And
Yeah.
the magistrates all say, well, it's a farming issue. These are all unregulated farming trucks that are hauling dirt into Louisville for subdivisions. And
Yeah, it's really a byproduct of sprawl, you know, and of course
Yep.
y'all are experiencing it. I know what you mean. Perry Thomas of Division of Water put a link in there, more information about MS4 permits, and Shelby Jett also mentioned Abigail Rains. She's actually no longer at Division of Water. I think I'm right that she has become a consultant. I'm a former consultant, so I can say she went to the dark side, as people say. But Abby does know a lot about it, and so you know, you could look at things. I mean, I think this is something that I'd like to talk to you more about. So let's see if we.
You're
can look
welcome.
at
You're
some
welcome
of
to come
them.
out anytime, and I'll be happy to take you on a canoe trip. And
Mhm.
I own a half-mile on the river here, so
Okay.
I'm very connected to the issue.
It's
And
very
I'd like-
concerning. I mean, that's a, you know, we deal with a lot of things that are more diffuse and non-point. This is, you know, when you're mining the soil off a property, it's pretty drastic. Yeah, and you know, there might be ways of getting maybe a non-regulatory, but no, I don't. I'm thinking about trying to get soil and water conservation and maybe cost share to.
I would accept any help you could give me. It's pitiful to say this, but that qualifies for a good job in Spencer County. So that's the problem we're up against. All the real estate development efforts and people that, you know, benefit from having topsoil and those sorts of things are going to fight this, and they have fought me for over 10 years. And so it's depressing that we haven't been able to get anything done on it. But they're right along the river here at the corner of Simpson Creek and Salt River, and they're probably 15 feet down now from where they were before. And I'll hang up and shut up. And
Okay.
but let's get
Well, this is good conversation. I appreciate it. And I hate to politely cut you off, but we do have to move on. But if you all could touch base offline, and if there's any relevance here and follow up to let the group know, that would be great.
Okay, super.
So thanks, Ward. And I think Ward, you said, Ward, you said you do have to cut out a little early, but he put his email in the chat, and definitely thanks for your time, and we'll move on. I'm going to hand it over to David Wicks, who's going to lead us through the creek spotlights here.
Well, why, thank you very much, Becca. One thing we decided to do this year was to feature several of the samplers and try to sort of have them think about their work and to get some questions answered. You know, we all do this, and we have very few opportunities to really exchange what we're really finding in our own streams, besides reporting the data. So we have 3 folks who volunteered, and our first one, here we have our first one has just got online, and that's Ed, and Ed is going to talk. Ed, why don't you, yeah, it looks like you're all ready.
Yeah.
Ed is working in Grand Park, at Ground Park.
Ed, you're on. Park, yes. Well, lucky me, I get to be first. Well, there we are in James Graham Brown Park, and this is a really lovely site. The park itself has a very heavy attendance. It's got the stream has a bridge across it, and there's a play area for kids, and it's just a whole lot of things going on. It's very nice, and so the parents and uncles and aunts and grandparents bring their kids there to play, and usually what they play with are the ducks and the geese. And so that is a real attraction for them, but it's a pain for the water because they feed the geese, the geese bread. And when I went there the last time to take a photograph, I think I took this photograph, there was a lady feeding the geese corn. And she said she just doesn't think it's very nice to spread that bread all over the place. So she's using corn to feed the geese. And I said, well, you know, the geese, when they get finished eating that bread or the corn, they just go into the water and poop. And so it makes the water polluted. And she looked at me real funny and she said, oh, and then I kind of backed off. I think I hurt her feelings. She felt like she was doing a good thing, and now I turned into a bad thing, but it's just a matter of opinion. But we do have an issue with that, and I don't know if anybody has any suggestions on what we could do about it, but the E. coli level there has just gone up catastrophically from let's see, in September 13, it was 663 per 100 milliliters. And the next year it was 738. And in 2019, the last time we tested, it was 24,196 MDL per 100 milliliters. So, I mean, that's just like saturated with poop. So that's my story. It's a really, really attractive site. It gives a lot of people time or an opportunity to get away and take their kid to the park and relax and exercise or whatever, but it causes a problem. And I don't know if anybody has any comments about that, what might be done about it, if anything.
Well, what I want to do is have all of our three spotlights, and then we'll come back and have an opportunity just for a quick discussion, if that's all right. But if you have ideas, put them in the chat, because Ed watches this. And we just want to give a shout out to Judy Lyons, who's also online tonight. She's a co-sampler. So sometimes it's nice to have partners to do this with. And
yeah. Judy wanted to be with us, and she's feeling kind of poorly because she had a fall and she's in recovery over it. I think she was on initially and then she jumped off.
All right. Well, thank you very much, Ed. And any comments or suggestions, certainly just put them in the chat or get around to the next one. We have next Greg Coons. So Greg is Crooked Creek, and he's also going to be, he's also a movie star. So he's going to be featured in this upcoming video that we're going to see. But Greg, you're on.
Well, good evening, folks. I have a farm out in Bullitt County that is downstream from the Boy Scout camp in Bernheim Forest. It constitutes the headwaters of Crooked Creek. And years ago, we started sampling at site 1927. And I was, one of the concerns and pushed me to sample was, were we getting any E. coli contamination from our cattle? And the farmers out there, they would run their fences so that the cattle could get in the water and have a water supply, but the cattle also pooped in it. So I convinced them that we should fence the cattle off. And I was looking at some old results, and our E. coli counts dropped in 2002 down to 166, 2003, 260. One high value occurred after a big rain event. And so we then moved our sampling site further upstream, close to the Boy Scout camp. And the Boy Scout camp during the summer has something like 600-700 campers a week. They have a treatment system that consists of a lagoon. It's about a quarter acre in size, and then the surface water flows out of that through filters, and then the final step in the treatment is chlorination. And all my samples during this period have been really low E. coli. So I think these are two examples of success and why the efforts of our sampling are worthy.
Thank you very much, Greg. And Russ, you're on next. And so Russ, just tell me when you want to move on to the next slide. You might be muted, Russ.
I live in Lawrenceburg in Anderson County, and I have 3 sites in one stream, Hammond Creek. This is give you an idea of the watershed. The numbers represent where I'm sampling. I'm sampling 1 and 2 is right above and right below the Lawrenceburg wastewater treatment plant. And number 3 is just about 100 yards above where the Hammond Creek flows into the Salt River. That number 3 was designed to get a better idea of the overall health of the watershed. 1 and 2 were selected because of concerns about the wastewater treatment plant. Go on the next one, David. So this will give you an idea of that watershed of what the land use. You can see that it's mostly small farms, and it's mostly forest, and but mostly it's open pastures. Go to the next one. And as we look at that watershed, this will give you an idea for that wastewater treatment plant. This is its service area. So you can see most of the watershed has no sewer system available. So most people are dependent, all the people there are dependent on either septic systems or on-site treatment systems. And this is creates a problem for us. Our largest wastewater generators for that sewer plant are Wild Turkey and Four Roses distilleries. So unlike the ducks and the scouts creating a problem, we never want to say that there's any problem with good bourbon. So skip that. So we do have in that open, in the most of the watershed, we do have a lot of cattle. We have almost 16,000 cattle in this county alone, and this is what's creating a problem in the other parts of the watershed. Next one. And we do, because of the lack of a sewer system, we have a lot of these septic systems, and they are regulated by the local health department. Next slide. So here, just give you an example of the E. coli was the main area of concern that I had, and looking at sampling from 2012, I believe, to 2019. This is the data that I have. You can see the white or the dark line is the E. coli levels, and I'm comparing that to flow. And so you can see there's a direct correlation between E. coli and flow. And that's what you've seen in some of the other studies that showed that we had some high levels, and a lot of times that's just due to the difference in the flow. But if you look at the median for above the wastewater treatment plant, you can see it's 739. And if you look below, you see it's 411, which seems kind of strange that here's our largest point source. The reason for that primarily is that lower levels below the wastewater treatment plant is the wastewater treatment plant's releasing so much water that's been treated, you're really getting a dilution. So I'm really measuring the fact that it's been diluted, any of the problems. Above it is mostly the downtown Lawrenceburg, and that's why you see it a little bit higher. And either place, downstream or above stream or downstream of the wastewater treatment plant, all of these E. coli levels exceed the body contact standards set by the state. Next slide. So kind of conclusion to all this, we're looking at a rural watershed. We only have the one point source. We have very little new or proposed development, primarily because we have no wastewater treatment system that people can hook up to. And in most of that community in the bottom part of the watershed, there is no water lines either. So you have to haul water. So that helps on the from a water quality standpoint, but we still have E. coli problem. We have, if we look at the upper part of the watershed, it's mostly urban, and that's stormwater runoff from the urban areas contaminated with inorganics, metals, and microbials, which we've measured before. The mid and lower portions of the watershed are high in nutrient and microbial levels, mostly from the septic tanks and livestock. So as I said before, the E. coli levels are correlated to stream flow. And the reason that we're seeing any difference between the two is mostly the dilution of the stream by the wastewater treatment plant. It's a major source of water for the stream. The water comes from the Kentucky River. And I'll stop there.
All right, well, thank you. Maybe we could put any questions or comments in the chat.
I was on mute and sorry. I was just going to say that, yeah, put your questions in the chat. And it's just fascinating. The Salt River Watershed Watch is so large, 3 presentations, 3 really different issues. Becca, do we have any enough time for just a question or two? Or I'd be fascinated if anybody have any comments for Ed about what to do about these ducks.
Yeah, we'll make some time.
Anybody have any ideas about control? Send them to Boston to walk in a line.
Well, really, the only thing you can really do is either move or get rid of the ducks, which I'm sure would create a controversy, but I have no suggestions because it looked like they've been there for a long time. There's not a bit of vegetation where they're all congregating.
Maybe it's stopping feeding them so much and having a public education program not to feed them and let them disperse, because it's the concentration maybe is the issue.
The population is growing too. That's the other problem. It was not nearly as populated as it is, well, you know, in the last time I tested anyway. And it seems like that's the pattern. But who would take the responsibility to do something like that? I mean, what agency would be involved, would be willing to take that off? Would it be at St. Matthews or what?
Ed, this is
Kentucky Waterways Alliance. I think Ed, Ward's no longer on. We'll pass it to Kentucky Waterways
Okay.
Alliance, but
Okay.
It'd be more likely Fish and Wildlife if those aren't domestic.
Okay. All right. Fish and
Yes,
Wildlife.
actually, it's the National Fish and Wildlife. This is a common problem on lakes. I've experienced it in a number of lakes, and it's the National Fish and Wildlife that can help cope with waterfowl.
Okay, thanks.
And one thing too to point out is that if we have vegetative buffers, the geese don't really like those. They like open spaces, and so that's an option too. And I know MSD does monitor that site as well, so that could be a connection.
All right. Thank
Why,
you.
thank you very much, our three presenters, and three really different regions of the Salt River Basin. And thank you very much. Becca, we'll turn it back to you.
Thanks. And hopefully this was helpful for, everybody to maybe start thinking about your stream site if you haven't thought about it in a bigger context. And I'll repeat this later on again, but if you want some help looking more at your site or at your data, just please reach out and be happy to look at it with you. But I'm going to turn it over to Dr. Amanda Gumbert. Amanda's our state water quality specialist with the Extension Service, and she's wonderful to work with. And I'm thrilled she's taken interest here in working with us a little bit to make these videos. And I'll turn it over to you, Amanda, to introduce them. And I'm going to get my screen up here so we can show them to you all.
Awesome. Perfect. Thank you all so much for letting me join you tonight. So I'm Amanda Gumbert. I'm an extension specialist for water quality on campus at UK, working with the Cooperative Extension Service. And so that just means that I serve the whole state working on water issues. I grew up in the Licking River Basin, and I actually lived in the Salt River Basin a couple of years. I was a student at U of L in the biology program. And before, as some folks will say, I became institutionalized by the University of Kentucky. And so now I'm in the Kentucky River Basin. But riparian buffers are, by and large, my favorite best management practice. And so anytime I get to work on streamside buffers, riparian buffers, whatever you want to call them, I jump on the chance. And so I want to say thank you to your organization, and especially Becca and Perry and others who were leading the effort to develop some instructional videos that could be posted on the Salt River Watershed Watch website. And so we had a little conversation that kind of spun into a bigger project. And so what we've done is we shot some video out at Dr. Coons's place. So thank you, Greg, for hosting us out there and letting us enjoy that beautiful property you've got. And so we shot video in last fall, and we have 2 videos that are finished and complete and are available publicly. We're going to show you one in just a minute. And I think Becca, based on timing and to give space, we'll just show the first one, the overview, and skip the second one we worked on is maintenance strategies for riparian buffers, because I know Greg has had experience with challenges related to invasive species, but certainly establishing buffers can be a challenge. And we have 2, so in total we'll have 7 videos. So 2 are finished and 5 more are in process. Your very own Russ Barnett stars in the second 2. And so they are currently being reviewed. And then we have 3 more to develop. So I'm really excited about the project. It's also spun into a virtual field day that I can share the date and a website so that you can see that and register for it. That will be in March, but I can drop that in the chat. And certainly if you have questions for me, feel free to jump in there. Becca, I will stop talking and let you play the video.
No, that's great. Thanks for the introduction. And I'm going to start playing it, and I'm making sure it's gonna go here, but you should see my screen okay.
This farm was put together by my grandfather over 100 years ago. And it was a farm both for wood products and for livestock and corn produce. I have a lot of memories since age 4. My father was in the military and we traveled around, but this was home. And during the Second World War, I spent a lot of time out here as a kid.
The Coons family manages this wooded farmland located in Bullitt County in the Knobs physiographic region of Kentucky. This land is drained by Crooked Creek and is part of the Salt River Basin. A portion of the original farm was sold to create Knobs State Forest and Wildlife Management Area. The Coons family manages about 300 acres with a focus on soil conservation, water quality protection, and wildlife habitat enhancement.
Okay, knobs are interesting geological formation. Their formation goes back to about 300 million years. 300 million years. They're composed mostly of shale. They have iron deposits with them, which made them attractive for the iron industry in early Kentucky's history. One early spring, we had 10 inches of rain in about 10 hours. These whole fields were flooded. We had to hike out over the Scout Dam here. The first time the spillway had ever flooded, and I had to hold on my dog to keep it from being swept away downstream. So it really reflects the runoff that can happen in this type of topography. And this is why it's important to keep the forest sustainable.
Riparian areas link water bodies and aquatic environments with upland land uses. Riparian areas are also called buffer zones or streamside management zones. Buffers are useful on all sizes of streams, creeks, and rivers, and even on lakes and ponds. Vegetation is typically composed of trees, shrubs, grasses, and herbaceous perennials. Stream buffers are important elements of watershed management and offer benefits such as protecting stream banks from erosion, holding soil in place, taking up nutrients in runoff water, and reducing flood damage.
I also joined the Salt River Watershed Watch, and that made me very sensitive to what was going on the farm. We also participated in the water quality form, sent the form in, and have since then been very sensitive to livestock interaction with the stream. We fenced those out of the stream, which I think contributed to the low coliform counts that we've had on the stream.
Kentucky landowners with 10 acres or more involved in farming or forestry must develop a Kentucky Agriculture Water Quality Plan to comply with state law. Developing a plan includes selecting best management practices that will be utilized on the farm to protect soil and water resources. Streamside buffer zones and restricting livestock access to streams are effective practices to include in ag water quality plans. These practices not only protect resources on the farm, but also help protect water quality downstream.
We've stopped growing crops per se, and in our fields to provide a more broad environment and ecosystem for wildlife, we've planted them with native grasses and in more recent years forbs. And I'm tremendously interested in trying to preserve the monarch butterfly, and we planted and have naturally a a lot of milkweed, and that's dear to my heart. Our whole approach to these attempts is to prevent erosion and preserve the quality of the stream. And having trees grow along the side of the banks tends to stabilize them, preventing silt, which would then impair the natural biologic activities that take place within the stream, the effect on the macroinvertebrates, and the fauna that lives in the stream.
To learn more about utilizing riparian buffers to protect water quality, contact your local Cooperative Extension Service office. To learn more about developing your Kentucky Ag Water Quality Plan, contact your local county conservation district.
Okay, that was really great. And I'll send out the, sorry about that. Let me, other one after this. And I saw Amanda put that in the chat, but we've got this virtual. We've got this. Sorry, I was having a Zoom issue there. We've got this virtual field day that Amanda's putting on, and I saw you put that in the chat as well.
Yeah, absolutely. And Beckett, for time's sake, we can drop the link to the other video in the chat, and folks can watch that at their leisure. And then that way we'll have a little more time for your other speakers and conversation.
Okay, that sounds great. Well, a little bit of preview there, and you'll get those other videos later on. So up next, let's see, we have sampling updates from Joanne Palmer. Joanne's, who you all know, she's the Watershed Watch State Coordinator. And Joanne, are you all set?
I am. You want me to share my screen and do the PowerPoint from this side?
Sure, you're welcome to.
All right. Oh, hang on. Technical difficulties with the girl.
Would you like me to share mine? Is that easier?
Yeah, that'd probably make it easier. How about
Sure.
that?
1 second.
While she's pulling up this PowerPoint, it's very short. I wanted to let you all know that we have modified and came up with a more simplified habitat and biological assessments. So I'm going to show you the way that we're doing the habitat tonight. And I can show you the form that we have for the biological. I don't have a PowerPoint yet for it, but the link on the bottom. Where'd the screen go?
I'm going to remake a couple people a co-host here because my Zoom just crashed. David, I'm making you a co-host. And I'll get this up again.
Okay.
Sorry about that.
That's okay. But one thing that I can tell you is in 2012, when we changed how we were doing our habitat and biological assessments, the numbers of people volunteers that were actually doing these prior to that were pretty well. I mean, we had, you know, the majority of almost every site in the salt basin submitted a habitat and biological assessment. And even probably into about 2014, volunteers were still trying to do the new assessment ways. And it is just really difficult. It's too difficult. And most of our volunteers have said that they're just not confident in doing it the way that Watershed Watch had changed it. So if you want to, can I move, or is David going to move it? The screen.
No, I'm going to here.
Okay.
Sorry about that.
That's okay. It wouldn't be a conference without some technical difficulties, even when we did it in person. So for those of you that have been around for quite a while with the Salt River Watershed Watch, this kind of goes back to the way that we used to do it. So the simplified process is a whole lot easier. We're hoping that it will encourage more volunteers to do this. And you can do this and upload your information online. So in this PowerPoint, I'm going to show you how you do that. Go ahead to the next slide. So this is what the form looks like. It's pretty similar to what the form is that you normally receive. So you've got the physical assessment on one side, and then on the other side, of course, the top will be like your chain of custody form, but it asks you about the land uses, you know, is it residential, agriculture, that type of thing. And then there are 3 things at the bottom that say odor, color, and floatables. And when we give you flip booklets, there's actually photographs and more detailed information as to what to look for. Of course, odor is pretty simple, but color, you know, if it's brown, it could indicate sewage. If it has a green or a yellow tint, it could indicate algae. And then on the floatables, it's not trash that we're looking at. Of course, you can comment in there that, you know, there was trash floating, but what we're looking for is there's suds in the water, is there foam, maybe that shiny sheen on the water. That's what would go in that floatable section. So go ahead to the next one. So this is the online link on that first page. That's where this link takes you. And there's a place there where you enter your site number. Go ahead and click to the next one. I actually took an assessment that I had from a volunteer and used it and did this step by step. Is there any way to make that bigger? Rebecca, do you know?
It's part of the PowerPoint.
Okay, so at the top, I entered a site number. And what it does is it automatically fills in when I submit, it automatically fills in the information. So it gives me the site number. It tells me the name of the creek, the county, the location. It has a map with the location with the latitude and longitude. And there's a little button there that says copy the URL button. When you click that, it will copy the link, which you then put into another window on your computer, and go ahead and it opens it to a Survey 123 app that KGS has developed. So in that app, it will take you page by page. So it automatically kind of has information in there when you put that in. The unique COC ID is the site number with the date and the time. It says, are you taking a sample to the lab? Of course, the answer is no, because with this, you can use this for just entering field chemistry But you know, with your chain of custody forms, when we take things to the lab, we want to make sure that information is still on there, and your chain of custody form goes to the lab with your sample. But this will be used for the habitat and the biological. You can also use it to just enter field chemistry. So if you're doing something and you've got your test kit, you can enter just field chemistry here as well. So on the, of course, it asks for your name. It asks what basin you're in. So this particular sample assessment was done in the Kentucky. Go ahead and click to the next one.
Yeah.
And so then what it does is it will automatically enter a date and a time, but you can change those. You just click on the calendar icon or the clock icon, because you want it to actually give the date and the time, or the date and the time that you did this assessment. So, you know, 3 days may have passed before you get around to doing this part. But you can change that. And of course, like I said, it shows an image of where your site is located. So it also gives you the opportunity to say, hey, that doesn't look right. Let's email Joanne and tell her that we're in the field and not in the creek. Go to the next one. So there's some things that we do automatically. Flow rate, rainfall and turbidity. Those are the normal things that we do for when we're collecting and doing our field chemistry. And then it will say, are you collecting dissolved oxygen and pH? Well, in this particular thing, no, we weren't. But if you were, you could click that and you would have a place to enter your DO reading and your pH reading. And the one thing that I want to kind of press upon you all is we had some samplers that were testing this just for field chemistry back in the summer. And we had dissolved oxygen readings of 875, 9,025, because they weren't putting that period in there. So instead of, you wouldn't enter it as 80 or 80, you would enter it as 8 and then put the period and then 0. I mean, because of course, you know, if we have a dissolved oxygen reading of 80, there's going to be everybody under the sun running out there to find out why. But there's also a place where you can upload photographs of your site. So if you have taken some photos of your sampling site, you can click on that and upload the photographs directly into this, and they will show, all this will show in the Survey 123 app. Go ahead to the next one. So on this particular slide, you know, it says, are you making a habitat assessment? Well, the answer is yes, because that's what I was doing. But if I hit no, then it would take me to the end of the screen to where it would just be field chemistry. But in here, it starts asking, I tell it, yes, I'm doing a habitat assessment. And then it starts going through things like, you know, what's the land use and things like that, you know, is it agricultural, residential, anything along those lines. Very similar to what we're already doing. It also has a place for pollutants. You know, did you see any or smell anything, the color, those types of things? Go ahead, Rebecca. Then it comes up on the floatables. Did you see anything? And it actually has boxes. The other one was the vegetation. It starts coming up with vegetation, which is something that is automatically on our old forms. You know, what kind of vegetation is around the area. Also, embeddedness is one that has already been on that physical side. And erosion is another one. Go ahead. So you just go through and you click these boxes, and you are required to click something. So You can't just skip over several things. But as you go through these, the bank stability and all that type of thing, it finally comes up with a score. And there's four categories: a good, a fair, marginal, or poor. And it automatically tallies everything and gives you a score. So like this particular survey was done in 2018. And the score that they received was fair. And that is exactly how this fell into place when I went through and was entering this. So go ahead to the next screen. So when you hit submit, it will give you, a message that everything has been accepted. If you skipped anything, it's going to give you an error message and tell you to go back to fix it. So if you skip one of those questions, it's going to give you, some issues. Go ahead. So these are the two different, there's a video that shows you about the assessment training. There's also an online presentation, and we can share these with you in an email. Go ahead if you don't care. Is that the end of it? I think that's the end of it. Do you have the two forms that I sent to you, Rebecca, that you can pull up? The habitat assessment form so they can actually see what it looks like?
I think we'll just send it in a link if that's all right.
Okay.
I don't have them up, but we'll get those out to everybody. Does anybody have any questions while we're talking about this?
And how does the photograph, do I need to take a photograph on a tablet or something?
If
I
you
take it from my
on your
phone?
phone or anything and you put it into your computer, you can upload it from your computer into there. You can upload them there's actually a place on there where if you hit the camera and your phone is plugged into your laptop or your PC, it will automatically go to your gallery on your phone, so you can choose the photographs that you want to upload there. Does that answer your question, Russ?
It's over my head.
On the biological form, we don't have a video or anything ready yet, or the flip cards, but on the biological, it takes the same, it takes a shorter amount of macroinvertebrates and puts them into the category of tolerant, sensitive, not very sensitive, that type of thing. And in the old way, it used to be not a quantity of how many we found, but was there a presence? So if you found 50 crayfish, you would they would all tally as one. I actually have that form. Let's see if I can share it.
Yeah. Well,
Can you all see this form?
Yep.
Okay, so this is the new biological assessment form. So it does the same thing, the weather conditions, what the flow rate was, the habitat zone, how many of these you actually looked at for the macros. And then it goes down and it has 4 different qualities or 4 different areas of sensitivity and the macros that are included in there. And so like if I found all 5 of these, it would just be 5. So it'd be the 5 times the 4, which would equal out to the 20. So it doesn't matter how many of a particular thing that I'm seeing. If I see even one, it counts as a mark. And of course you would tally that up and put that number here. And it gives you, it breaks it down into the good, fair, marginal, and poor. And then on the next pages is where it actually breaks down what the macros are that are in each particular section. So that is what that particular form looks like. I was going to see if I had the other one, and I don't. I don't have the other one up on my page, but the online training, you can actually watch that video, and you know, if you want to try and give it a try this summer or this spring, and try putting your findings into that online link, that would be really, really good, because right now the information that we've been collecting, there's nowhere on the KGS data portal to house that information, which is a little frustrating, because I know it takes a lot of time to do those assessments. Y'all have any questions?
I have a question. This is Carmel Bowman.
Uh-huh.
So what I'm understanding, there's a paper form, but there's also an online portal to input that information. Is
Correct.
that only a phone app or a mobile app, or can you do that on your desktop? And
you can do it on your desktop or your phone, either one.
Okay, and do you have a preference? Would you rather have paper, or would you rather have it already typed in?
On the assessments, I think it's better for you all to enter those and send them in. That way, the KGS that has created this Survey 123 app, we use that in our lake monitoring program. And at any time you can go into that app, and you can not only see all of your photographs and assessments that you've put in, but you can see others. So, if you're looking at other stream sites or curious about what other people are finding, you can look at their assessment reports as well.
Okay, and that will be available through the Salt River Watershed website, and you'll be sending that out periodically, like with our sample information.
Yeah, and if you want to do those assessments, I can send you the paper form so that you actually have something to jot down when you're out there doing it, and you can use that to click on the link and then fill it in after you get home.
Okay, sounds great. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Thanks, Joanne. And yeah, I would encourage everybody to try to use this app either on their phone or on the website, having the paper as a backup, but give it a try, and reach out if you have any questions or something's not working, but that's kind of the best way to get us integrated into using it. So thanks, Joanne.
Yeah.
If anybody comes up with other questions while we're going through the rest of this, just put them in the chat. So I'm going to hand it over to David Wicks just for a couple of minutes, because I want you all to know about our Earth Day event that David's spearheading here. And I'll share my screen again with you all. And take it away, David.
I tell you what, why don't you let me share my screen?
Sure, go ahead.
And yes, it's a pleasure. We tried now for 3 years to do Earth Day events, and this COVID piece has got us in trouble. Many thanks to Metro Parks and their hard work down there in Shawnee Park. They've built a new beautiful boat ramp that we want to celebrate. And so our Earth Day piece is going to go on up and look at the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers Falls of the Ohio National Wildlife Conservation Area, the only conservation area managed by the Corps in the entire United States. So we leave my big Voyager canoes, and we have a number of sponsors in addition to it. There's a lot of excitement around it. So in addition to the Salt River Watershed Watch, we have, the Metro Parks and the Ohio Riverway and the Corps and the Falls of the Ohio Foundation, the Kentucky Waterways Alliance, and Origin Park. And so in essence, what we're going to end up doing, this is sort of an old map, but 8 a.m. we meet, but 10 a.m. we start to paddle. So a lot of registration time, and we paddle on up to the Falls of the Ohio. So if you look right here, we have our little Shawnee boat ramp, and we paddle 2 miles. We'll have up to six Voyager canoes. So we can take, 60, 70 people with us. Now people can also take their own canoes. And so we're just going to come on up here and clean up Sand Island, which is one of those pieces. And then each one of the co-sponsors certainly will give a little talk. The Army Corps, I think we'll have the commander of the Louisville district there, encouraging citizen science. There's been a change in the Army Corps. There's a new lockmaster and a new commander, and they're very interested in citizen science. So we're going to have a nice little, we'll spend some time cleaning up, and I think we'll have a catered lunch if it all works out. And then we'll hear from our commander and sort of the value of this National Wildlife Conservation Area. It's an unknown attribute. So it's a bit different for the Salt River Watershed Watch because we're normally on tributaries, but we just wanted to sort of bring attention to the good work that Metro Parks is doing down here, and creating access to the river. And so it's just a nice celebratory time. One final piece is this past year, Russ Barnett and I taught a nice class at the University of Louisville, and we collected invasive species. So now it turns out that there's a woman at U of L in the Fine Arts Department, Rachel Single, who is taking these invasive species and transforms them into paper. And so uses the plant fiber from the invasive species. And so we're starting to make a series of posters. And of course, we use the old 1839 map. And they changed the name. The Army Corps you have to sort of keep track of them once in a while. It used to be Sandy Island when you look at it up. So it's zoomed in too far. But this used to be Sandy Island. Now they dropped the Y for some reason. I'm not exactly sure why. But so in 100 and, almost 180 years ago, things change. So that's what we're going to do. And we'll probably end up collecting some invasive species as well when we're out there, just to make more paper. And one nice thing is working with the Kentucky Waterways Alliance and Al Gorman, we're going to start to collect and go through the trash that we pick up and create some artwork out of it. So that's our little deal. We hope that everybody from the Salt River Watershed Watch participates. We will have a sign-up form in the next couple of weeks. And Friday, April 22nd, birthday. Back to you, Becca.
Thanks, David. So stay tuned for that and hope to see everybody on the water. I'm gonna move the next video to the end because I just want to be considerate of everyone's time here. But if you have to hop off at any time, you'll get that all those links after, so not to worry there. So we're gonna jump into the state of the Salt River Watershed Watch here. And I'm going to talk a little bit about the structure of our organization for those that might not be aware. What we do, I'm going to talk about data and monitoring. So a recap of 2021 monitoring results, a little bit about getting more involved because we're looking for more involvement here as well. Recognizing our volunteers because that's why we exist, because of volunteers, and then a little bit about funding. So reminder that the Salt River Basin, it's one of 7 watershed basins in Kentucky. So just looking at the scope here of our state. And we are part of the Greater Watershed Watch of Kentucky organization. So the mission of Watershed Watch in Kentucky, and this has, if you've been paying attention, this is a little bit different than last year. There was a really big strategic planning effort with Watershed Watch in Kentucky the past several months. And so we've got a lot of great plans for the next few years here. So Watershed Watch in Kentucky supports water quality monitoring that informs, connects, and empowers volunteers and their communities for the improvement and protection of Kentucky's water resources. Great mission. So our goal is to get people in the real world to learn about the conditions of their natural waterways. And just a little bit more about Watershed Watch in Kentucky, because I realize this can be a little bit confusing. But again, this is the umbrella organization for us here as Salt River Watershed Watch, as well as the 6 other basin groups. They coordinate and advise Watershed Watch groups, support citizen science with tools to collect and interpret data. It's run by a board of directors, and that includes 6 subcommittees, and pursue funding to distribute into Watershed Watch groups for monitoring. So this umbrella organization is the reason that we have a lot of the funding that we do, in addition to donations and other fundraising efforts. And that's the link to the website there, kywater.org. Okay, so what does Watershed Watch do? Well, kind of simply put, train and certify volunteers, conduct field assessments, collect samples for lab analysis, and discuss and interpret results. And hopefully this conference has kind of connected a little bit to each of those pieces there. And so our introductory sampling, this is our field chemistry. This is where we go in the field and we collect our own data with these kits. So that's dissolved oxygen, pH, temperature, and conductivity. And then the second piece of this sampling is a grab sample for bacteria. So that's the sample that gets collected in the streams and then gets taken to the lab to determine how much bacteria is in that stream based on that sample. A little bit about why we monitor E. coli. So we monitor based on the standards that are set in Kentucky for E. coli. So what this does is it helps essentially assess a risk where the more E. coli, the more bacteria you have in your stream, the higher the risk to potential both human and animal health. And what contributes to that E. coli is what's happening around that landscape. So there's failing septic systems, there's sewer system overflows, wastewater treatment plants, stormwater outfalls, straight pipes. So another big piece there is wildlife, as well as pets. Dogs can be a big contributor. So we already talked tonight about both birds and livestock. So there's all these contributors that happen in the stream. So when we get those really high E. coli levels, we want to start thinking about where are those sources that are leading to those high levels. And then Joanne talked about this quite a bit, so I'm not going to get too much into it, but just mentioning again that biological and habitat assessments are also a part of what we do. And this sampling happens on your own. We recommend going out and doing this assessment in June or July, and we'll send reminders out for that as well. But using both the landscape, the characteristics of the stream that we get visually, as well as collecting the macroinvertebrates, which are indicators of both high, good water quality as well as poor water quality. Everyone that gets trained is loaned a kit, and you can keep this for the duration as long as you're participating. I know we've got a lot of kits out there, so I'm hoping that in the next couple of months we can try to collect kits that maybe people just decided that this Watershed Watch doesn't work for them with their schedules or whatever reason, or maybe try to connect back to people to figure out why people aren't sampling and get them and their kits back out there. Thinking about just funding. So a full sampling kit is about $300, and it's about $100 a year for samplers between those lab fees and other chemicals and shipping out materials and all of that. So just to get you a sense of costs there. Salt River Watershed Watch was started in 1998. I know several of you that are on were part of this beginning of the organization. And as of 2021, 102 samplers have been trained, completed that core training. And we have our steering committee. So at the local level here with Watershed Watch, we have a steering committee and a diverse group of people that help support volunteers and make sure that we get funding and coordinate with volunteers to keep us going. So thank you to our steering committee. And I'll just point out that if you want to be involved in steering committee, you're more than welcome to sit in on a meeting and join us. We'd love to have you. In a typical year of activity, so following with a typical year, we've got our annual conference here in February. March or April, we have training, so both the time to recertify if you need to do that, as well as training for new samplers. And I'm going to bring up those training dates here in a minute. We do our general field chemistry and grab sample for E. coli 3 times a year. So that happens in May, July, and September. And then, like I mentioned, in June or July, we encourage people to go out and do that habitat and macroinvertebrate monitoring. And then in any time year round, there's opportunities for pilot studies, for lake monitoring, group projects, and digging more into the data and in that community support and outreach that was mentioned by Ward earlier. So we've had 125 trained Watershed Watch samplers, and as of 2022, we have 122 active sites. So that's sites that I don't actually know how it's figured out that it's active. I guess I should have asked Joanne before that, but sites that have some activity within the past few years, or a sampler that has committed to that site. So that's the gap there of us trying to figure out, there's 54 sites sampled in 2021. So that's a lot of sites that haven't been at least actively sampled in 2021, and we want to close that gap there. In terms of samples, so at those 54 sites, we had 113 water quality samples. So that's that chemistry and that E. coli grab sample. I'm going to talk a little bit about the data from last year. So again, we had 54 sites monitored. And what we do is we take all that data that comes in through both May, July, and September, and we create this Salt River Basins report card that I'm going to show here in a minute. But digging a little bit into this. So based on the data collected last year, bacteria is definitely high in the Salt River, and that's reflected in the samples that came through. So this graph is showing, I took all the bacteria samples that came in, and I've graphed them based on this legend of excellent to maximum. So that's where it's exceeding the lab analysis actually. And we had a couple of sites that did exceed the maximum testing level at the lab. Most of our sites fall in this fair to poor category, but we had 28 sites with average E. coli. And again, we're comparing this to the Kentucky Division of Water Standards for E. coli. We had 9 sites that were above 5,000 colonies per 100 milliliters. So that's a pretty high amount that did go up from previous years of how many sites that are really getting to the very poor levels here. And I've got them listed right here, and they do show up throughout all of the Salt River Basin. So we see Shelby, Jefferson, Spencer, Oldham, Bullitt, Mercer. We're seeing that everywhere. For our other results here, so that's these samples that you take in the field itself and determine those with your kit. So dissolved oxygen, pH, water temperature, and conductivity. Overall, we've got pretty good results here on these samples. We've got a few that are looking poor, a handful that are fair, but if we look at water temperature, all our water temperature samples were really good. And comparing this to both last year and the 2019, there's actually some improvements here overall on an average, but it's hard to compare because every year we seem to have a different group of people sampling, and we have people who sample every year, and we're trying to get more people committed to making sure you're getting out in the stream both every year and for those 3 dates. But I'm going to send this all out, and if you have any questions, feel free to put those in the chat. Referring to that report card, so we complete this report card on a watershed scale basis here. So starting with bacteria here, this is figured out based on how many, we had to have at least 3 samples in each watershed to get this determination. And we can see that here, Oldham was the best at scoring an A. It's kind of like a, report card, A to D. But here in, Jefferson County and both Oldham going down there, we're looking at some pretty high bacteria levels. And this is really helpful when we're looking at a watershed scale, because even if we've got a couple of samples that were really good, maybe there's 1 or 2 that are not so good, and we can look at where those samples are. Were they both upstream or downstream of those good samples, and start to maybe think about some actions that we can take and connect with the other people monitoring in our watershed. And that's something that we want to think about too. For field chemistry, I mentioned that our results were actually really good, but based on this report card model of looking at the watershed, it doesn't take that many not so good samples to actually result in the watershed not getting a good grade. So we can dig into that a little bit more, but overall, the water quality is not looking super great here in the salt, and that's something we can talk about later on too. I encourage everybody to look at your data. If you have any questions about how to get on the data portal or look at your data or pull it up, just please reach out. We want to make sure that you're going in the field and you're collecting that, but then you also can see what your results are and you can track that over time. And that's where your site, you and your site, you're going to be the most knowledgeable person about your site. And so I kind of want to put the onus on the volunteers to look at your own site and then speak up if you think that there's an issue. And that's going to be the best way for us as a group to talk about that and think about some future actions. This table is not meant for you to be able to read right now, but this is a full table of all the results from 2022. I sent this in an email a little while ago. I'll send it out again, but I just want to make sure everybody can see their data here. And this is color coded based on both the standards for E. coli as well as for those other in-stream parameters. So we can see, as a whole, what did we get for the salt last year? And talking about 2022, so we've got our sampling dates from this year. Per usual, they'll be on the second weekends of May, July, and September, and then again that biological and habitat sampling on your own. I do want to point out that I know sometimes that Friday or Saturday is not always good dates for people, so I don't want that to discourage you from going out. Just give Joanne a call or myself, and we'll connect you with the lab and make sure if you need to go on, the next Tuesday or the Thursday before, that the lab's aware and you can go and drop your sample off. And spring trainings for this year, so we have 3 of these set. And if you're interested in becoming a trained sampler, then that's really great. We want you to do that. So you have to take this introductory watershed watch video and take this quiz here. And that's really going to be helpful. So when we get in the field, we can kind of jump in and you have that background knowledge a little bit more in depth than what we've talked about today about, what's entailed in sampling, and make sure that that's still of interest to you and you're ready to jump in. So we'll have these dates both at Crooked Creek, Curry's Fork, and then Floyd's Fork. Just thinking about more ways to get involved. So again, we'd love to have anybody who's interested reach out. There's lots of skills out there and we could always use some more skills on our team. If you're interested in fundraising, recruiting more volunteers, serving as a substitute runner. So for those sampling dates on Saturdays, we have runners. And that way, not everybody has to drive to the lab. You can connect with somebody in your area and they'll take those samples to the lab for us. Makes things a little bit more efficient. Sampling teams and mentors. This is something a little bit new. I think we would like to try, where if we go out and we generally sample by ourselves, but it could be helpful to connect again with people sampling near you, or if you're somewhat new or a little unsure about sampling and you want to make sure that you're doing it right, or maybe for whatever reason you would just feel more comfortable having another person with you. We're going to try to connect people. So just another thing to think about, and reach out to us if that's of interest to you, either having a sampling team and helping us put those together, or being a mentor or a mentee. I mentioned those area coordinators, so we could always use subs and more help on bringing samples to the lab. So if that's something that you're able to do, is provide a little bit of transportation and extra time, then we'd appreciate that as well. I mentioned Watershed Watching Kentucky has committees. So anybody is welcome to join those committees. You don't need to necessarily be on the Basin Steering Committee to join in that. Maybe you want to understand more about what's happening on the statewide scale. So there's a financial committee, organizational capacity, outreach, citizen action, data committee, and I think there's a basin outreach. There's 6 total there. So those are opportunities as well. And funding and grant donations. So we do really heavily rely on both grants and donations and fundraising. And we're hoping to kick this back up here at the local level. And I'll show you a thing in a second about what we're doing at the statewide level to raise money. But we do get a good contribution from grants at the state level. But we really appreciate organizations and individuals who help to give and keep us going. Because I did mention those lab fees can be quite expensive, as well as the kits. Ward mentioned this earlier, but KWA is our fiscal sponsor. So if you'd like to donate to us, you would do that through KWA, either on their website, or you can send them a check and just let them know that funding is for Salt River. And then at the state level, there is currently this Mighty Cause campaign to raise some funding. I took this clip a little while ago, so I actually forgot to check where we're at now, but we're looking to have a quick campaign throughout the state, and then the funding that gets put towards this is going to be distributed throughout the 7 basins. We do have our own website, so that's www.srww.org, and we try to keep this updated, but if you are good with websites, let us know, and we could use some help making sure everything gets on there. But that's a good way to keep up with what's going on and look, find out a little bit more about us. And one of the last things here is volunteer recognition. So this year we have 3 pages of names, which is really, really exciting. And this is our list for both 2020 to 2021. So we had a really big group of people join up in the past couple of years. So that was really exciting. We had 3 trainings last year that were full. And then we've got a whole page here for 2010 to 2019. So thank you. And the leaders here that kind of started with the organization, thank you for your service. I really much appreciated. Okay, so a survey. So if you've been getting my emails, which I hope you have been, trying to kind of put some of these pieces together, answer some of these questions, about having a mentor, being a mentee, sampling groups, if you have a kit that you need to return, all these different questions. We have this specific Salt River Watershed Watch Sampler survey. Really appreciate it if you could fill this out. It takes about 10 to 15 minutes, but we're really trying to gear what we do towards you, and so this is going to be really helpful. Thank you for those that have already filled this out. And I'll send this out again as well. And I will quickly mention that in an effort to try to just get more outreach to the public, I worked with Melissa Mcallister. She is the basin coordinator for the Kentucky River Basin. We held this little session 2 weeks ago now, just kind of a general learning session on becoming a volunteer stream sampler. And there's a link here, and of course I will send that out. But trying to get more outreach to the public and build our streams, build our volunteer base here and get more people at our streams. And with that, thank you so much. I hope I've caught us up a little bit here, but I'm going to stop sharing my screen and maybe a minute for any questions if anybody has them.
Thanks so much for doing all this.
Okay, we have one more really great presentation. And again, if you have to head out.
Okay, if you're talking about mine, I would suggest not doing that this evening. It runs a little longer than most people will have time for. So you could just send a link out to everyone and they can watch it on their own if they like. Yeah,
and I'm happy, Michael put together this really great video, and I'm happy at the end to show it if anybody wants to hang out. And I'll put that up, but I'll also send links out later.
I personally would love to see the video. So if you could put it on after Bennett's presentation, that'd be great.
Yeah, we'll do that. I'm happy to stay. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Bennett Knox. And Bennett, don't feel like you have to rush or anything like that. Not surprisingly, we're going a little long-winded here, but take your time. I'm really excited to hear from Bennett about natural areas and how it's connected to our waterways and the work that he's doing with Louisville Parks and Rec. So whenever you're ready, thanks, Bennett. And you're on mute, Bennett.
I need to unmute. Very sorry about that. So yes, thank you for having me. So I'm Bennett Knox. I manage natural areas for Louisville Metro Parks based at Jefferson Memorial Forest. And purpose tonight was really just to introduce you to 4 projects that we have that hopefully will improve water quality in Jefferson County. And so I'm going to skip a few slides, but the projects are a large project in the Mill Creek Watershed, which is in southwest Jefferson County. We've got a couple of projects at the forest. One is a recreation area, Tom Wallace, which is our main recreation area that is due for some love. So we've got an infrastructure project there around the lake that I'll share. We do have 2 fees in lieu of stream restoration projects in partnership with Kentucky Fish and Wildlife. So those, I'll introduce those. And then finally, and I appreciate David giving a shout out about some of the stuff in West Louisville. I'm going to talk about Chickasaw Pond and what we are planning to do there. So I'll jump right in. Again, natural areas, it's just a division of Metro Parks based at Jefferson Memorial Forest. We do a lot of park management or campground trails, that sort of thing, but we also have a program division that does our summer camps and our public programming, and then a land management staff that does all of our land management across all of the different natural areas, which a little bit of a map here. So we do have natural areas across the community. Some you might be familiar with, Caperton Swamp on River Road, Beargrass Creek and Butchertown Greenways are under our area. And then we also have Fairmount Falls in East Louisville, Coleman Beach Reserve on the Ohio River and the Salt out in southwest Louisville, and Waverly Park. So a lot of those have water resources, riparian areas that we try to improve. So I'll start with the Mill Creek project. Some of y'all may have heard of this. So Mill Creek Watershed in southwest Jefferson County. That's a map of the watershed. This project is really, it's land bank properties that were set aside for flood protection in the 90s. And so I know you're all probably familiar with the folks who were responsible for that. That was during the Armstrong administration. Just very visionary to have set that aside. I'm sure MSD, if Aaron's on the call, just a partnership effort. So really 30 years later, we're finally at the point of actually working to do something with these properties that have really been land banked and kind of forgotten over the years. So this project will basically, through the FILO project, fees in lieu of structure, put quite a bit of money into the watershed to do stream restoration activities. We as parks are looking to, and we have funding from the Nature Conservancy to do a conceptual master plan for park infrastructure improvements to make this one of our natural areas, be a 1,000-acre park. And so we're talking the things you might expect: trailheads, potentially, water-based recreation as appropriate, wetland area boardwalks, interpretive trails. We're not talking ball fields and tennis courts. It's all nature. And an effort to really showcase this for the community and open it up to the community for use and appreciation. Does fit into the idea of having Southwest Louisville be a tourist destination. We have a lot of natural areas that we try to promote, including the forest, Riverside Farms and Woodland Landing on the Ohio River. So this is really a huge project. It's going to be, it's still in development, so it's been approved preliminarily. And so now there's a consultant on board to start doing all the investigations, the surveying. It's going to be in phases over really 20 years probably to be completed. Our part at Parks is doing a master plan so that we're ready as the project progresses to try to fundraise for additional design work as these phases come about. So it's going to be split into 5 phases. Basically, runs from Sylvania Community Center, which is in the north, all the way down to where the Mill Creek exits at the MSD pump station, right next to the Mill Creek power plant. So you can see quite extensive feet of streams. The wetlands are a part of this as well. And then there's public and private parcels. So it's just a pretty massive project to pull off. And here's some current conditions. If you're not familiar with Mill Creek, it's basically been channelized. Doesn't have a great habitat. Doesn't do well in terms of the metrics that you see here for habitat and better for water quality across the area. It's improved, but this project is really focused on improving habitat. So that is one of the main focuses of putting in stream meanders, improving the shape of the stream itself, incorporating in wetland areas associated with it, putting that under conservation easement, and then allowing us in the areas that aren't under conservation easement or could be appropriate to come in and do the recreational amenities. So it's a combination effort. So my purpose here tonight is really just to give a high-level overview. So I'm just going to run through these other projects, and if you have any questions, happy to give my email at the end and give you more information. And some of this is on our website as well. Another area is Tom Wallace Recreation Area at the Forest. It's our main recreation area. A long time, one of the first properties purchased and established in the 1940s as a recreational lake. Hasn't had much investment since the mid 80s. I think we use the term in parks, it's overloved. And we're really trying to solve issues related to that overuse by hardening areas around the shoreline. We've had a lot of erosion over the years into the lake. And so this is an effort to really improve the visitor experience and at the same time improve water quality. So on this map here, this is a general overview of our forest master plan. It's kind of in the middle. If you can see my cursor, that's Tom Wallace, right across from our Welcome Center. This is a photo from the dam. It's second growth forest around the recreation area, which is over on the right. You can see the dock, the floating dock in the distance, but there's no trail hardened around the majority of the lake. So we have a lot of fishing access, a lot of hiking access, and not the waterfowl that you saw at Brown Park, but we still have that condition along a lot of the shoreline of just a lack of cover and erosion into the lake. So this project is going to be in phases. We have money for a first phase right now, which is really focused on creating ADA access from the front of the park, which you see to the right, all the way to the back to the lake. For purposes of tonight, talking about the lake improvements. And the main thing I wanted to really show is some of the steps that we're going to take to harden access and really protect the shoreline. A couple of elements here. Paths that will go around the north side of the lake, and north is up. And then at the headwaters of the lake where this stream comes in, we're looking at having 4 bays to allow sediment to drop out and some wetland plantings in there. You see on the left, there is a boardwalk proposed over the lake. So we're going to have formal access for kayaking, which we've never had. It's always been allowed, but now we'll really be able to have a place for canoes and kayaks to put in. And that 4-bay area will be more of an environmental education area for us. So there's a lot of community benefit with this project. This is just a cutaway of one example of shoreline. So if you can kind of see that the things we're going to be doing, creating a path and then hardening the lake with rock shouldering, depending on the nature of the slope and the proximity of the trail to the lake itself. There's different treatments that will be done. This kind of gives some examples if you're familiar with reading plans. But we're just really excited about this as a first phase to get this lake back in shape and allow us really then to springboard to some of the other amenity improvements for visitors while protecting the lake for the future. So this is an exciting project for us, long overdue. Another project, we've got a couple areas of the forest. These have been taking a long time to put into place, but these are also fees in lieu of projects where the Corps of Engineers, if you're familiar with that, so it's mitigation funding, that instead of actually someone who's doing damage to streams doing the stream improvements themselves, they put money into a fund. That fund is then used to find properties where there are degraded streams that can be improved under contract with Fish and Wildlife. So we're a park area. They love finding properties that don't have a lot of different private ownership, so we're a little easier to work with. And so we do have 2 projects right now active at Jefferson Memorial Forest. So I don't know if you can see my cursor, but in the middle of the screen right here, middle at the top, is an area off of Keys Ferry Road. The stream is called Wolf Run, and this is an area where we've identified in our master plan that we would develop new environmental education facilities. A number of reasons for that. It's closer to the community, closer to facilities, infrastructure, utilities, but also the area that we have picked out has just everything we need in terms of outdoor classroom space. So I'll show you here briefly. This is a view of that particular area, kind of zoomed in. You can see Wolf Run. It does continue on back into the Tom Wallace Recreation Area. So there's at least 2.5 miles of stream and tributary here that can be restored. This particular stretch is more towards the entrance to the area. So the stream is a little bit wider, and this is really great location where our facilities are going to be. So we're going to be able to incorporate into the stream restoration a lot of access points for school children to experience environmental education programming. The condition of these streams, and I wish I had a photo, I'm sorry I don't, really to Mr. Coons' presentation earlier where he was showing, the riparian presentation. That's what it should look like. That is not what it looks like. We have heavily incised streams from erosion from the logging area in 1800s. In some places, the bottom of the stream is completely scoured, and you can stand at the bottom and you're looking 10 feet, 12 feet, extreme cases 14 feet up to the top of the bank. And these are just really horrible conditions. So this is going to really improve this area in a lot of different ways, bring back macroinvertebrate habitat. So again, that really ties into our mission of environmental education, but it's really going to do wonders for habitat in the area as well. So let's see, another project, fees in lieu of project, is associated with the Louisville Loop. So this is a map of the Louisville Loop corridor options in Southwest Louisville. I'm sorry it's a little busy, but if you can follow my cursor, and if you're familiar with the Gene Snyder Freeway, right as you're traveling Gene Snyder from the east and you're coming upon Dixie Highway, which is right here, there's actually an underpass under the highway that is where the Louisville Loop is going to come through. So that's the plan to come. This is Pond Creek. Pond Creek kind of travels on. Ultimately, the loop will go under the highway and back through what we call the Mormon Hill section of the forest. So along this stretch is called Dodge Gap. There is a stream channel here that comes off the hill, and similar situation, heavily incised. But this is where we have an opportunity with the Louisville Loop coming through to actually coordinate the path with the stream restoration. So that work is being coordinated right now with Kentucky Fish and Wildlife and the folks overseeing the Louisville Loop. You might know John Swintoski and his folks who used to work at Parks. Now they're associated with Public Works. So just really exciting to see those two bits of planning come together at the same time. It's going to be a fantastic scenic area while at the same time restoring a wonderful stretch of stream as well that feeds into Pond Creek before exiting out to the Salt River. So that's an exciting project as well. And let's see, the last one I'm going to give, and hope this is informative, is the West Louisville project that we've been working on for a while out of Park. So Louisville Echo is our programming component of what we call the West Louisville Outdoor Recreation Initiative. So we're coming at this from Parks to try to engage children in nature, to improve equitable access to nature. So this is really focused on urban youth, low-income youth. And so we have a heavy focus on West Louisville. The program itself is designed to create amenities in West Louisville where they haven't existed. So we're talking recreational amenities that are nature-based to provide access for environmental education and outdoor recreation opportunities. So of course, when you think about West Louisville, and David teed it up earlier, we're talking about the area along the river from Portland Wharf Park and really going all the way over to Shippingport, through the golf course at Shawnee, to Shawnee, and then on to Cherokee. This really wonderful strip of riparian area that's for the most part wooded, with the Louisville Loop and what's called the old Riverwalk passing through. So great opportunity to think of these as connected parks and think of the recreational opportunities that we provide in a connected sense. So we've been doing that. David mentioned the new boat ramp at Shawnee Park. But what I wanted to focus on today is what's going on in Chickasaw Park, which you see up to the southeast of this map. South is up. So that is, well, quickly, the programming itself, which will take advantage of these amenities. We do age 3 to 21, early childhood nature play, field trips, out of school time recreation. We have summer teen camps, all of it designed to feed youth into summer employment with us and possibly longer term job opportunities with Parks. So that's kind of our strategy. I have a few photos to show you kind of the programming to give you a sense. These are the types of things we do with youth all year round. Take them to Red River Gorge, and as far as the environmental education trips. So introducing them to water in their neighborhood as a pathway to then coming out to places like Jefferson Memorial Forest or going to Red River Gorge and the Red River. That pathway is what we're trying to create by creating these amenities in West Louisville, giving an opportunity for youth to develop a stewardship ethic, have some adventure, develop a love for nature by doing things out in nature. So those are some of the examples coming together as a family. Mentorship opportunities that pass the information on to generations is important. So again, that's the program. That's why we're, one of the reasons we're trying to create this infrastructure is to be able to do more of this programming. So back to the project. So Chickasaw Park, I'm sorry, I'm jumping around here. A major goal for us is to have a nature center, a regional nature center in Shawnee Park, like what we have in other parts of town. So this is a rendering of the facility that is under consideration right now for funding in Shawnee Park. We're hoping to obtain ARPA funding, which is the American Rescue Plan Act funding. We have a request in that could actually fund this facility this year for construction. We do have construction drawings. So point being, the amenities that I've talked about we're trying to create will feed into programming and support programming out of the center. So sorry I didn't mention that earlier. Some of the things we've already done, we've talked about the boat ramp, we've built trails, a bike pump track in Shawnee Park, a hiking trail is under construction now. We put in a temporary program office in October to begin doing this programming. So all of that is happening, and much of it relates to access to the water, the Ohio River, and now, finally, Chickasaw Pond. So this is Chickasaw Park, a section of Chickasaw Park. If you're not familiar with Chickasaw Park, it was previously a segregated park. Shawnee was the whites only park for decades, from the 20s to the 50s. Chickasaw Park was the black only park, desegregated not until the 50s. So it is beloved in the community. It does have a pond that for the longest time, as many on the call know, was contaminated from most likely air deposition. Testing has been done. We have had a funding source that allowed us to do a full suite of testing recently, work with the community to develop a restoration plan. So we actually have shovel-ready project design drawings to restore this pond, enlarge this pond, and really establish it as a wonderful community asset that offers recreational amenities that really haven't been available in its degraded condition. So canoeing access, kayaking access, environmental education access, improved fish habitat, areas for picnicking and passive recreation, the whole 9 yards in terms of what a pond can be for a community. And this is the only flat water resource in West Louisville outside of something called place called Watershed Lake, which is really more of a detention basin. So really opportunity to create a wonderful asset in Chickasaw Park. Associated with this is, we're right next to the Ohio River. And so if you've been to Chickasaw Park, the action of the river over the years and the way that management has changed, climate change, the severity of our flooding, the severity of our climate, our weather has really degraded the riverbank. Here's a photo of what the riverbank in Chickasaw Park looks like. You've got 20-foot drops, severe erosion, unsafe conditions really. It's actually moving towards the park. And so we have a request in with John Yarmouth's office through the budget process to actually do an initial, through the Corps of Engineers, an initial survey of feasibility of bank stabilization. So we're in the process. If that's approved by the Senate, we will actually be able to have a first phase of a look at this feasibility study, and that, if it's in the process of federal funding, could ultimately translate into construction and stabilization of the riverbank. So there's a lot going on in Chickasaw to help stabilize the riverbank and also create a restored pond for use by the community. I know I've covered a lot. Just want to do that at a high level, so I appreciate the opportunity to talk about it. And if there are any questions, I would love to answer them. But otherwise, here is my email, and I would love to have contact with you all.
Thanks so much, Bennett. A lot of good stuff going on. Are there any questions?
Bennett, this is David Wicks, and I'm just so impressed with the work of Metro Parks and the transformation of Shawnee Park and Chickasaw Park and all of the work you're doing up and down the Ohio River and also in Jefferson Forest. It's just wonderful. I think Metro Parks is the key for really engaging the entire community in our streams. And so it's a pleasure to have you present here tonight.
Well, I appreciate it. It's always great to have wonderful partners, which you've been for so many years. Taught us a lot.
Bennett, I was curious, any sort of volunteer opportunities you think coming out where you need some people to help plant trees or something like that?
We do. We're in as you can imagine, COVID has been tough. So we actually have some staff vacancies, and our volunteer coordinator is one of those. So please do check our website. We are in a little bit of a transition to try to reinvigorate our program. If anyone, we do have opportunities to work with our trail crew to do trail construction, that sort of thing. I just say keep in touch, check our website. We're going to be hiring. We have had recommendations in on a couple of people right now to get back on track with our volunteer program. I have to admit that.
Great. Well, keep us updated.
Another idea, Bennett, is that I think the Salt River Watershed Watch could provide a training to the high school students that are in your older camps. And I think it'd be a neat process for science fair projects and getting kids involved in those streams. So we'd love to help you with that.
Absolutely. Well, I did mention the new program office in Shawnee Park, and we're in the process right now of hiring staff to up our programming. And so there are plenty of opportunities there, particularly moving forward as we get that facility up and off the ground. So thank you for mentioning that.
Well, I'll give an official end to the conference, but I'm gonna hang on here for a few minutes and show a video. But thank you for everyone for attending and speakers. This has been really great. And we'll follow up with contact and all these links and resources we've talked about, and looking forward to a great sampling year.
Thank you.
All right, I'm going to share my screen again and remind you what I'm sharing here. So Michael Price created this really awesome video. Actually, let me make sure I did that so you can hear it. Created a video about his stream site, and I'm going to not talk too much about it because the video will tell us.
I live in the same neighborhood in which I was born. As I roam my neighborhood today, I still see it as it was in my youth. When I was very young, I was confined to my block on Massey Avenue. I was allowed to ride my tricycle on the sidewalk as far as the mailbox on the corner of Chenoweth Lane. Eventually, I expanded my range several blocks, and thanks to my older brother and sister, discovered a field at the end of Massey that was part of the last remaining farm in our vicinity. To me, it was a wilderness. The field's distinctive feature was a rolling hill, often filled with tall grasses, thistles, Queen Anne's lace, and daisies in the summer. It also provided a gentle sledding slope for us each winter. Through this field flowed a creek. It was often dry, but with heavy rains it flooded into what we called the Twin Brook, a juncture of two small streams that together make up the headwaters of the muddy fork of Beargrass Creek. This confluence, lying just west of the overpass of Hubbard's Lane, provided us with a very small swimming hole. We would swim, or more accurately wade, in the cool water to escape the summer heat. Only the fear of water snakes or snapping turtles would interrupt our fun. As we grew older and bolder, we would wade under the road to the stone quarry on the opposite side, where a true swimming hole would appear in the limestone excavation after each heavy rain. I spent many days, often alone, playing in this creek. I enjoyed watching the life of the creek, the water tumbling over the rocks, and the creatures sometimes hiding under them. I learned that by moving the larger stones, I could encourage new channels that sped the water's flow. I formed dams to create small pools to trap tadpoles, water spiders, and minnows, so that I could watch them closely as they made their escape. The creek ran dry for much of the summer. When walking through the tall grass, it was often difficult to tell where the creek had been, but the swimming hole at Twin Brook always held water. I see all this in my mind's eye now, the way it was in the 1950s when I was growing up in St. Matthews. In 1976, I bought my house on Clover Lane, just a few blocks from my boyhood home on Massey. It lies adjacent to a catch basin built by the city to retain water that would naturally flow through that same field. The field has now become a subdivision called Trinity Hills. Trinity Hills did away with the open space that provided relief from the monotony of suburbia. It also strangled and distorted my creek. When I bought my house, it backed up to a grove of huge maple trees. One exceptional tree was nearly 10 feet in diameter at the base. After complaints from the new residents of Trinity Hills about flooding in their property, the city decided to enlarge the catch basin. After all, who could have ever suspected that there would be flooding in a floodplain? When the project began, the first step was to cut down all the beautiful maple trees, the trees that had persuaded me to buy this house. It's easy to imagine that the drops of rain falling on my home might find their way to the river, or ultimately to the ocean. They take with them anything they can pick up along the way: leaves and branches, mud and sand, tar from our streets, chemical fertilizers and herbicides from our lawns, and any other litter or poisons we discard. I wonder what I am sending from my yard to the Ohio River. Is some of it being returned to me by our water company? The muddy fork of Beargrass Creek is not celebrated. There are no parks bordering its banks. Most people don't know its name. Many don't even know it exists. But it flows from the basin in back of my house down to the swimming hole near Hubbard's Lane, where it joins its sibling at Twin Brook. From there, it passes under US Highway 42, then through Indian Hills to Interstate 71, where it bends west and flows to Butchertown and converges with the main channel of Beargrass Creek. It is mainly hidden from sight as it passes through the residential neighborhoods, showing itself briefly as it passes under the winding roads. Nobody travels the Muddy Fork. It's too small to carry a kayak or canoe. I've seldom seen anyone else in it or even near its banks. I joined Watershed Watch in order to learn what is happening in my creek. My testing site, 1915, is in the bend of the creek on the east side of Hubbard's Lane. I know that data has been gathered about the Muddy Fork for many years, but I don't have this research. I don't know if things are improving or deteriorating. Is it more or less polluted than when I played in it as a child? How does it compare with similar creeks in other locations? What harmful things are going in the creek? I've seen straight pipes dumping into the creek, but what are they dumping? It's heartbreaking for me to see what has happened to my creek. This beautiful stream that still exists in my memory is now nothing more than an unpleasant ditch in back of people's houses. Most people try to hide it. Often it's piped underground. No one seems to care about it. No one seems to care about the life in it, much less the life that has been driven from it. I joined Watershed Watch just 6 years ago. I've collected samples and gathered data 13 times now. While I'm glad to be able to contribute to the efforts we are making, I question the quality of my own work. I try to be consistent in my measurements, but I am not confident that I'm doing everything correctly. I would like to have an evaluation of my work in order to be sure that I'm accurate. As I grow older, I'm concerned about passing my information on to those who will follow me. I hope that someone will continue this work in order to provide an accurate record of the status of the Muddy Fork. It may seem odd that I would adopt a creek like this. It's not the sort of place that inspires a visitor or stops them to take a scenic photo. The Middle Fork is more visible and accessible, surrounded in part by lovely Olmsted parkland. But the Muddy Fork is my watershed. This is where I live. This is where my water goes. I need to know more about it so that I might make my neighbors more aware of this creek's existence, its condition, and how it's changing. This somewhat insignificant stream once afforded children like me an opportunity to encounter my world firsthand, without a lot of intervention by adults. It allowed me to learn about nature by putting my hands on things, by seeing them and watching them change through the seasons. Regrettably, this is often missing from the lives of my grandchildren. I hope that those who live in similar places are moved to protect areas like this from the form of development that is destroying them. For me, development is a pejorative term. When a thing is enveloped, it is whole, complete, unified. When it is developed, it's ripped apart, dismembered, destroyed. Developers seem to think they can improve nature, but it's not our place to improve it. We're part of it, part of the natural environment. As pathetic as this creek may now seem, it remains my one true link to the natural world. This is where my water goes. My hope is to leave behind something to help nature to restore itself, or at least to dissuade those who would develop it even more. Henry Beston, author of The Outermost House, wrote, "A human life, so often likened to a spectacle upon a stage, is more justly a ritual. The ancient values of dignity, beauty, and poetry which sustain it are of nature's inspiration. They are born of the mystery and beauty of the world. Do no dishonor to the earth, lest you dishonor the spirit of man."
It's more than just a piece of land. Will you walk?
Really nice, Michael. It was a nice video.
Yeah, did you have anything to add, Michael? I want to make sure to acknowledge that. That was really great.
You cut short the line from Kate Campbell.
Oh, no.
That's I really don't have anything to add. I'm doing this for two purposes. One, for this conference, I wanted to show you why I'm here. Not so much, I'm not a scientist, I'm not a hydrologist or anything. I'm here as a volunteer. I'm concerned about my community, and I'm concerned about getting people to become aware of it. I also have another goal. There is a proposal right on my watershed to build a 300-unit apartment building right down the street from me, which is going to dump into this watershed as well. And I'm hoping to use this video to at least inspire someone to think about the natural environment. This is the last remaining open spot in St. Matthews, where I live. Those of you who live in other areas, this is what your future may look like. And we gotta work really hard to keep developers who just thinking, whose values are only measured by money. So that's what it's all about. Thanks, Becca.
Thanks, and I'll send that video out after. Does anybody on this call have thoughts about where this video could be sent to maybe get some people's
Michael,
ears?
I thought your video was wonderful, and I really think it should be
Thanks, David.
widely shared. And I think it is the story of Salt River Watershed Watch. You're an ideal volunteer. You're an ideal spokesperson.
You're very kind. Thank you.
It was a good deal. A pure pleasure to listen to it.
Thanks, Becca.
Thank you. Carmel, you had mentioned in the chat that you had a site you wanted to talk about. Do you want to talk about that now?
Well, I just wanted to mention that several years ago, the Salt River Watershed Watch had planted a bunch of seedlings on our riparian zone down by our creek. And if you were interested, if you wanted me to share my screen, I could show you how they have progressed. And
Sure.
you see, we have lost several because that area floods regularly, but I would be happy to do that. Let me show this real fast. Can you see that?
Yep.
Okay, so this is our house, and all of this was farmed and was hay fields, and it's currently still being farmed. The surrounding areas are being farmed for soybeans and corn, depending on what the year is. But our property obviously starts right here, and there were an awful lot of trees that have been planted right along there. You can see all that. So we've been working on extending the riparian zone. When we moved out here, it all looked like this bottom edge right here, if that. So we've been working on not mowing it and extending the riparian zone out further. And we have lost probably half of the seedlings that were put out there, but we keep adding to it every year. We keep adding more and more and trying to extend the zone out. So anyway, thank you all very much for your contribution to this. I tried to talk my neighbors into being a part of this project, but they said no, and I'm disappointed in that. But as I walk from my mailbox back up to the house, I can see the difference that our riparian zone has made, and our banks are much more stable than this little section right there. Also want to show you my solar panels. Very excited about that. Okay, that's all I wanted to show. And I know that Russ was out there, I know he was one of the tree planters. I don't know who else was out there planting, because we were not even in town when they did all the planting work. So thank you again very much.
That's really awesome. Thanks for sharing that. It's a great picture right there.
That was Karen Schaefer who helped organize it, and Russ and I and a couple other people went on out, and it's just so exciting to see the results. Carmel, you do good work.
I try, and I'm going to get back into being a better sampler this year. I am.
Carmel, we've heard that before.
Well, I'll keep saying it and I'm gonna do it.
Come join the steering committee. We'd love to have you.
Been there, done that one too.
Becca, I think we should post Michael's video on our Facebook page and put it on our web page as well. I just think it was such a good inspirational project.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, well, any more discussion, questions, comments? Thanks all for staying on. All right, well, enjoy your night. Thank you so much, and we'll see
Night,
you soon.
everybody. Thanks.